Almost all of the Roman emperors lived scandalous lives, disgraced themselves, drank until oblivion, had multiple orgies. Marcus Aurelius didn't do that. Imagine, see, for 19 years, you can have whatever you want. You can have all the money in the world, you can have all the sex in the world, you can bring wine to boatloads, and no one would judge you. No law would stop you, no people would stop you. You own everything. And imagine you could do that for 19 years. And you actually don't. You choose not to. I don't think I could do that. I have to admit, he's a better man than I am. I can put up to that challenge. And see, all the other Romans, emperors did that. And he didn't. It would have been acceptable. People would have been like, well, it's okay. But he didn't. He did what he ought to do. And he controlled his soul, because that's the only thing he could control. The externals, no, he can't control that. All he can control his thoughts, intentions, and his actions. He can control his emotions because we all have a rational being. So yeah, I don't think I could put up to that level of intensity. We have little temptations. Marcus Aurelius has our temptations maximized 10,000-fold. We have small temptations to cheat on a test or whatever. He has those same temptations through the roof. He can have sex with 1 million people. He doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to, and he doesn't. He can. He can have all the money in the world. Just take it. He owns everything. He can do it. But he doesn't. He knows that it wouldn't really satisfy him anyway. But all the little small things his ego wants. You know, all the little small and dark desires your ego wants. Imagine you can take it. You have no constraints. But he doesn't. For the Stoics, any virtue accessible to one person is accessible to all. So we can all be like him, but we choose not to. You know, it is quite difficult, but we can be like him. The Stoic philosophy is kind of like this. Everyone gets sick. That's part of life. If you don't like that, well, you don't really like life. But say you get sick. Why complain? You know what you have to do. You have to go to the doctor. So why complain from when you get sick to when you go to the doctor? You know what you have to do. Why complain about any of this time? So that's kind of what it's about. It's also about courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. Doing what you ought to do. Meeting your moral obligations. Doing the best. Marcus Aurelius wrote a book to himself. What kind of man writes a book to himself? The purpose of book is to express emotions, tell a story, like show ideas to the public. But he wrote a book to himself. The book was called The Meditations, and it was basically multiple books of diaries he had. He just renamed it The Meditations. And what he goes over is just, it was a lot of ideas, but he did repeat many things over and over again, like don't get mad at people. Either you teach them or you put up with them. If you can't teach them, just put up with them. So he repeats those kind of things over and over again, but then he just repeats or writes new moral maxims. I think one of the reasons he wrote a book to himself because he's the loneliest man in the world. He is at the highest chain of command. Everyone complains to him. He has no shoulder to cry on. He has no equals. There's no one like him. So that's why writing a book to himself would also calm him down, clear his thoughts and his emotions. And as Anne Frank said, pages are more patient than people, something like that, on the lines of that. And Marcus kind of knew that, I think. All Marcus Aurelius wanted to do is live a philosophical life, and he had the misfortune of being the emperor of Rome. Well, kind of sad. But he gives these self-centered people justice, even though if they don't even deserve it. That's the type of person he was. Justice is part of the Stoic philosophy. So, even if people don't deserve it, he would still give them justice. People around all of the Roman Empire would come to him at any time of the day and just complain. They would complain about something, or they would say that they want something from him. Every time, all the time. So, he doesn't complain. Because why complain? There are things in your control and there are things outside of control. In your control, thoughts, emotions, actions, thoughts, intentions, emotions. And then there's the things, the rest, outside of control. And if it's outside of your control, why complain? If it's inside your control and you can't control it, then do it. Stop complaining. So when people complain to him, it's kind of hard to take it. So constantly writes about don't get mad at people, because he's trying to live up to the highest standards. So you feel kind of sad reading his diary. You're like, well, he can't complain. It's kind of shit. He's trying to be the best person. And I'm pitying him. But if he would look at me, he would pity me. But yeah, it's kind of sad. He's the loneliest man in the world. He's the most powerful man in the world. And he's trying to be the best man in the world. Morally. Not proving it to anyone. Not being like, oh, I'm the best. Just trying to be the best man in the world. And I heard that, like, when there's wars going on, he was selling his stuff. Selling the stuff he had to support the people. He even said this: even in a palace you can live well. That's the type of man he was. Like, that implies he can live anywhere. And that's a part of the Stoic philosophy. The Stoic man makes himself consistent with nature. So anywhere where is nature, he's at home. He's cosmopolitan. The philosophical man returns benefits for those who harm people, because they know no better. He wrote intriguing, caustic moral maxims like, soon you will have forgotten all things, and soon all things would have forgotten you. He knew what time really was, and he knew, like, why bother thinking about all this money I have, all this power, fame? Who cares? I'm gonna be dead, and all the people that are complaining are gonna be dead. All the people I love are going to be dead. Why complain? He also wrote that God put you in this position. Everyone else is sleeping. Stay where you are and stay awake, because God knows what will happen. So he knows that if he leaves this place, if he dies, someone much worse is going to come and take his place. And that's what they did. So he knows he has to stay awake. He has to take care of the Roman Empire and do his best, do what he ought to do, meet his moral obligations. That's who he was. And it's quite sad. He has no shoulder to cry on. He's the only man out there trying to live the best life he can possibly live, controlling his soul. And the thing about it is, this would be not even impactful or exciting or intriguing if this was a hypocritical philosophy. If he was hypocritical. If he would be like, oh, I want everyone else to be this perfect person, and I'll just be like fat and do whatever. That would be boring. That wouldn't make sense. But there's not the slightest taint of hypocrisy. He does good things. People complain to him. People annoy him. He still does good. I don't know why he would like us. That's weird. Yet, justice, courage, temperance, and wisdom. Being nice to people. Temperance. Having little. He had everything, but enjoying little. So, the Stoic philosophy was a cosmopolitan political philosophy. It was also a moral one. So, like I said, the Stoic man makes himself consistent with nature. So, anywhere where he is, he's in nature, so he's at home. His polis is the cosmos. That's what makes him cosmopolitan. In ancient Greek political theory, you are the citizen of one political polis. So you can be an Athenian or a Spartan. The Stoic man is cosmopolitan. So he constantly reminds himself, no excuses. Don't tell me this because of temptation. A cosmopolitan political philosophy is necessary when running this massive heterogeneous Roman Empire, full of peoples, cultures, heterogeneous ideas, full of diversity. Marcus Aurelius would have been as happy being a slave, being a Gaul, being an Egyptian, as being the Roman Empire. It wouldn't matter. If he has a soul, and if there's nature, well, he's a Stoic then. He can practice Stoicism. That's all he needs to be happy. There's one reason why the Romans seem so cold, unfeeling, harsh men, is because they see other people's problems as trivial. They don't sympathise with it because it's trivial to them. They can't feel for it. People get sick. Well, you know what you have to do. You go to the doctor. You don't complain. It's trivial to complain. So he's harsh in his criticisms to himself and to others, but he's not hypocritical and he's not unfair. The only person you can compare him to is Epictetus. And Epictetus was a slave. The social dynamics are enormous, but they can come at a mutual respect because they're practicing Stoicism, because they know that an orderly soul is all that matters. It's all what it takes to have a happy life. Greatness is the knowledge that virtue is enough, and they both knew it. So they knew what they can control and what they can't. They knew everyone dies. You're going to die, I'm going to die. And trying to prevent death is kind of stupid. Well, you understand good health and everything is important. But your body's going to decay. You're going to die. So why worry? Why complain? Be happy. He was talking about the gods. He wasn't really sure if there are gods or if there aren't. So he's kind of agnostic. But if you read between the lines, you realise that he did kind of believe in the gods. But to get to that point, he had to talk it through. He had to think, well, if there aren't gods, if it's all just atoms in the void, how would I have to be like? And if there are gods, how would I have to be like? So what's the perfect medium? What's the perfect middle? If there aren't or if they are. So if there aren't gods, what difference does it make what happens to you? Whatever you do, nothing really matters. Nothing can happen to you in nature that isn't part of nature. So don't worry, be happy. But if there are gods, they could be gods like Socrates, all-knowing, moral and virtuous. And would that type of god hurt you? Well, maybe if you did bad, maybe then they would hurt you. But if you consistently did good, met your moral obligations, would they harm you or would they kind of befriend you? So he does kind of believe in the gods, the same way as Pascal does. In every case, he controls his ego, he controls himself, doing what he ought to do and meeting his obligations. The Kantian virtue is similar to the Stoic virtue. Greatness is knowledge that virtue is enough. He would be embarrassed if he knew that people were reading his diary, if people saw the crack in the Stoic face, because he wouldn't want people to know that he was afraid, that he was tired, that he was angry, that he was upset, that he was lonely. He wouldn't want people seeing any of that. He used Stoicism to be free of passions, of external emotions, trying to be a full human being. That's what Marcus Aurelius was like. What a man.